Hello, this is Dom from Black Toad Studios and welcome to another Retro Codex review. In this series we'll go through some of the old codexes, reviewing them, some of which I've owned, some of which I haven't. And today people, we are going through something I have owned. Oh my goodness, it is the 3rd edition Necron Codex, a codex close to my heart. I did own this one, the first codex for Necrons. So without further ado, let's check this out. So as we're all now delving into the 9th edition Necron Codex, let's look back now at the 3rd edition, the first Necron Codex, the one that started it all. Back in 2002, this codex was revealed. And let's have a little look through what we've got and how the 9th edition one differs from this, and what inspiration it took from this very first codex. So as we start here, we have a fantastic cover. This is what Necrons are kind of going back towards, in my opinion. It's the undead look. As Necrons creeped into 2011, they had a slightly different look, more of an Egyptian theme, but back here in 2002 it definitely was the undead aesthetics that we're now seeing once again in 9th edition. So as we turn the pages here, we have a lovely greeting with a sky full of monoliths on the left there. Very, very nice bit of artwork there. As we all now know, the monolith is being replaced with a brand new model, but back then it was a very imposing model, and for myself collecting Necrons, I did have a monolith and it was a definite centerpiece for the army. As we turn over to the right here, we will see that it's written by a plethora of legends within the community here. So we've got Andy Chambers first off, Pete Haynes, Graham McNeil, Phil Kelly and Andy Hoare there. And wow, what a fantastic bunch to put this codex together. So you can definitely see straight away how key this codex is going to be. Brand new race into the game. As we go into the introduction, we're greeted once again with some brilliant artwork. I don't think Blanche really takes part in this book. Let's turn back a moment and have a look. But yeah, I don't think he's in this one at all. There's some other brilliant artists here. We've got Carl Kapinski, who has done the cover and some other key artwork. But this, once I said, he's got the undead aesthetic, which really I think is quite important throughout this codex and throughout the Necron range at this time. We're greeted by a lot of information about the Necrons, because once again they were a brand new army in the 40k universe. They'd been kind of hinted at in the Gorkamorka game, which if you haven't played was an orc version of Mad Max. Absolutely brilliant game. Came out at the same time along with Necromunda. Really worth playing if you haven't had a chance to do so. There are some differences as we go through this from what the Necrons are now to what they were back here. A lot of these stories are taken really from, they're not from a Astartes point of view. For the majority of these stories, they tend to be through your Imperial citizens, your guard, your rogue traders, a little bit of Admech in here. So it's quite interesting. You've got the story here about assassins. This whole book was kind of themed around the fear and the unknowing of the Necron race. Definitely changed a lot over the years, but it's quite a good book. A lot of these stories are quite creepy and really worth a read. With Warhammer 40,000 Black Library novels coming out for horror, can definitely see a lot of them taking inspiration from the Necron range. Over on the right here, we've got a couple of flayed ones. So flayed ones were new to this edition. Necrons beforehand had a couple of rules from White Dwarves. They had scarabs, destroyers, warriors and lords. That's all they had. So suddenly, with this codex being released, the range expanded quite dramatically. But as we look through the book, we're going to notice there's a few differences to where they are in 9th edition now, and you see how dramatic the changes are. So we'll go through into the next page here. So you've got the army list. So down on the left here, you've got your basic standard mission army layout there. So you've got 1 HQ, true troops. Optional, another HQ, 4 more troops, 3 elite, 3 fast, and 3 heavy support there. So it's very similar to your standard battalion that you'd kind of be looking to run at the moment, which is quite interesting. I think it was pretty normal across 3rd edition, so keep that in mind. But let's move on, shall we? So down below here, we've got the Necron special rules here. And yeah, pretty standard stuff once again. It's one of those things that Necrons are still trying to find their place. Oh, this was the foundations to what Necrons have become. There's still some bits here that have been taken out. Now, if we look over on the right, there is a rule here, phase out. Now, for Necron players that have played a long time, like myself, from the 3rd edition, you will remember phase out being the bane of the Necron existence. So essentially, phase out was a rule where if 75% of your army had been destroyed, your army would then disappear, leaving the battlefield, leaving you to be defeated by your foes. So what you tend to have when you brought your Necrons to a game, your opponent would immediately ask, what's your phase out number? You would then answer 50, and your opponent get brilliant, just got to kill 50 and I've won. So yeah, glad that has gone, because that was an absolute nightmare. Of course, we've also got We'll Be Back, which is now known as Reanimation Protocols. Very similar in a lot of ways here. So 4 to 6, the model stands back up. 1 to 3, it is removed. Now, there are a few things back then that would bypass We'll Be Back. For instance, if the weapon was the strength was twice what the toughness was, it wouldn't really help. And it was only aided by a resurrection orb. So you would basically have your army gathered around your lords and hope for the best. But yeah, so that rule has changed over time, but that is what it was back then. We then move on to the Necron Armory here. There's a few entries. There's a bit of information here about Gauss weapons and what they do, which is quite interesting, because back in the day, your basic weapons on your Necron warriors were able to take out the likes of a Land Raider, where a lot of other weapons in 3rd edition wouldn't do anything. So you'd have a serious struggle, but Necrons suddenly changed the game, being able for their basic warriors to do damage to heavy armor. As we go through here, we've got a lot of similar war gear that we still see today, which is pretty good. It kind of shows you how strong a lot of the stuff was. You've got destroyer body as well, so we'll get into that in a moment. It'll become apparent. And then we go on to the entries. So first off, HQ. Now you might see here you got HQ, and over on the right you got elites, and you go, oh, where's the rest of the HQs here? Yeah, that's it. 1 HQ, Necron Lord. As we saw on the previous page, you could upgrade your Necron Lord to have a destroyer body, so then he'd be able to fly around with the destroyers. But yeah, back then only the 1 Lord, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. We then have pariahs. So pariahs were unique in 3rd edition, because I believe after 3rd edition they did suddenly vanish from the Codex. Now keep in mind that the Necron Codex, this one came out in 2002, and they didn't get a new Codex until 2011. So that is a massive time to go without having anything new. And when it 2011 hit, they had some amazing new models. Unfortunately, Pariahs went the way of the dodo and completely disappeared from the Codex, which is a shame because they're quite a unique unit within the Necron race. Who knows what will happen when 10th edition comes out, but unfortunately the Pariahs are no longer with us. Very sad times. So they were able to cause issues with morale there. Then we have Immortals. So Immortals back then were in the elite section. Now we know them being in the troop section. We'll have a look at some of the models in a moment when we get through there, but there's definite change there between the two. Some people prefer the older Immortals, some people prefer the new Immortals. We then have Flayed Ones. So we saw some artwork earlier of Flayed Ones, and like I said before, these were another new unit which were introduced into 3rd edition. And they had some nice little rules there. They were your combat versions, your combat Necrons. And yeah, they've lasted a long time. We turn over to the troop choice and we're greeted here by a lovely picture of a very ramshackle Necron warrior. And you can see here that when they've looked into 9th edition, this is what they've gone with the Necron warriors. And I think it's brilliant. I absolutely love this picture. If I could get a copy and mount it on the wall, I definitely would. So straight away there, you've got 10 to 20 in a squad, which is brilliant. That's exactly what you want. Nice big squads of Necron warriors. Back then you could take a disruption fields on your guys for 2 points per model. Obviously now that's a stratagem, but that used to be an upgrade there. Go over to the fast attack. And we've got Wraiths. So Wraiths have also changed over time, but this was the first time they appeared in the Codex. So straight away there. Then now obviously Canoptic Wraiths. So they took away the actual Necron feel and made it a bit more robotic. Now throughout this, the Necron backstory has changed from 3rd to 9th. Back here, Necrons were still slaves to the Satan, and they took second fiddle really in the Codex to those models, which is interesting because obviously in 9th edition the background changed and suddenly the Necrons enslaved the Satan and the Necrons took a step up in the narrative, which I really do prefer compared to back here. They were just robots, Monolith robots. Next here we have the Destroyers. So Destroyers obviously still with us now, and the models from 2002 are still with us as well. There's obviously some new Destroyers that are coming out or have come out depending on what time you watch this. We have Scarab Swarms below as well. Move over to Heavy Support. So heavy support here, we have got 3 entries. We have got the Tomb Spiders up here. Yep, nice little rules there, being able to put new scarabs onto the battlefield, just what we wanted, has remained over time. We have heavy destroyers down here. So heavy destroyers have kind of gone back and forth between being an upgrade in the squad to here being a whole separate entry into your heavy support there, which was more like a las cannon back then. Once again, very nice artwork. We have the Monolith in heavy support here. So as I said before, this vehicle was an absolute beast. If you had a Monolith in your army back in 3rd edition, yeah, you were in for a good time. Your opponent, not so much, but you were definitely in for a good time. And as you can see here, it's very straightforward, a lot of these stats here. You haven't got a lot of other unnecessary stats. You've just got your armor value here, so 14, 14, 14, which at the time was the maximum armor you could possibly have on a vehicle there. And yeah, they were pretty incredible to go up against. Right, so we move over, and that's it. That is it. There's no dedicated transports. There's no flyers in 3rd edition. There is just that. And you see here, like the summary is pretty tiny to what we're used to now. Coming into 9th edition, the HQs have increased a huge amount. The elites likewise, as well as the fast. The troop choice has doubled, I suppose, with 2 entries now. And the heavy, you've got dedicated transports, Lord of Wars. There's so much stuff. But back here, wow, look, one vehicle. One vehicle. What's that all about? Weapons, barely a handful. Another amazing bit of artwork here, iconic bit of artwork with Satan there rising up above what I'm guessing are maybe expedition of rogue traders perhaps. And over on the right here, you've got the artwork of the pariahs. So the pariahs obviously were replaced by really the Lich Guard, kind of took their place here. As I said earlier, the narrative has changed from what we're used to in 9th edition now. Back here, you've got a lot of very similar stories, why the Necrons ended up the way they did. But as I say, the story ended differently. Alternate history here. And the Satan remained in charge. Now, as we go along here, we've got special characters. And the Satan here, you're greeted by a big plethora of rules, which put across that these guys are in charge. They are pretty intense. And back there, these are Satan. They're not Satan shards. So as we know in the history in 9th edition, they were shattered and now used as weapons and energy sources. Back here, they are still complete sun gods. So that is worth remembering. We then come up to the man of the moment, the Nightbringer. So back then, once a bit similar to now, he was a beast. Although he's only got 5 wounds, he's strength 10, toughness 8, 5 attacks, and some amazing abilities there. So yeah, he had a moment in the sun. He liked it for a bit, but then unfortunately he shrunk back and hit at the back, and now once again in 9th edition he has launched himself back to the forefront of the Necrons. The Deceiver as well, these 2 models are still out there now. I really love the Nightbringer. The Deceiver's a nice model. At some point it'd be nice to pick him up, but there we are for now. This page here, as I said previously, in 1997 this appeared in the Gorka Morka book, and it's a little expedition report of the Imperium finding some interesting pyramids, and of course we know what was inside those pyramids. So yeah, a lovely little callback here in this book. 5 years prior, this was in another book. Necrons were just a whisper, and here they are in their full glory, having a full release, a model range and a codex. Brilliant stuff. And as we see here, you've got some nice models. At the time, these were brand new. Those green rods, unique, very unique. I'm not sure I was ever really on board with them, but they were very iconic for the range, and for Warhammer 40,000 in general. I think up until they were replaced, these green rods definitely represent. You knew what these green rods were about. A pain. They would always fall off, and you'd have to go and find them and glue them back on. We then look at the horrors of the Necrons. So once again, the horror, picking that across there from what you'll see in later editions. So we have up in the top left, we have got a Necron Lord there. Interesting model, not the best model in the world. We have the Immortals. So as I mentioned, some people like them, some people didn't. I quite like these models. I think they're very nice, especially being metal. They're pretty cool. We have the Pariahs. Not looking great now. It'd be interesting to see if they ever redid them, if there was a nice new sculpt, and see what they look like. But yeah, they have gone. Warriors only recently replaced, and I don't think they were that terrible at the time. Obviously, as time went on, they did start to age dramatically. Up in the top left here, we have got the Heavy Destroyer, which was quite an interesting model. I remember having a couple of these, and there being like faults in the gun here. It was oh no, not good. The old Wraiths, so the ghost-like Wraiths here. You can see the Necron look here. Going forward in 2011, they had new models, so they had the more robotic look. We have the flayed ones down here, which have had brand new models again. So this is the first model for the flayed ones. For my personal collection, I had a squad of 10, had different coloured flesh. I had some Tau flesh and some Orc flesh in there, so I mixed it up a little bit rather than just having human flesh. Would be quite interesting for a different aesthetic. We have the Monolith. So, huge model, absolutely huge. Now has changed. Starts to look dated. A lot of this range has been, looking dated for a little while, and it's brilliant that they're getting some nice new models. Tomb spiders, come on, what's going on there? That doesn't look good, does it? So, the aesthetics in this book at the time were pretty groundbreaking. Unfortunately, they haven't lasted very well. We then have a little bit here, how to construct your models. So the idea with this would be you pick up the models, you pick up this book, you can go to this book and you can learn a little bit how to make them up. We then have about dry brushing and washing, which at the time for 3rd edition was a new concept. If you look at the pots there, yeah, you can tell there that it was a brand new thing, really. And yeah, I think it really defined the Necrons as well, being able to wash them and dry brush them. A bit different to your normal aesthetics you're used to in the Warhammer 40,000 universe at that time. Now it's very commonplace. Little bit demonstration here of what your army should look like. You've got some basic tactics here. Essentially, your main tactic would be to move forward into your opponent's face, slowly walking forward, and let your opponent worry about trying to take all the Necrons on. A few more pictures here of the Satan. You have some painting details there. There's lots of nice ideas that kind of move on to different paint styles. So you'd have your metallics, very commonplace within the Necrons. Ceramics, which are quite interesting concept, that you'd have ceramic Necrons. I would have loved to make a couple of those up, but I was never brave enough to do so. Ancients, so possibly like the Necrons I have at the moment in the Todak dynasty. The more ancient look there, and combinations down there. So it's really giving you a lot of options here to kind of define what you want to do with your Necrons. A bit about the Monolith there. And how to make terrain. So in 3rd edition, it was all cardboard and foam. There was no real model range for the terrain. So Games Workshop kind of encouraged you to hobby and to bring it up yourself rather than trying to sell you lots and lots of models. As we carry on here, we have a lovely showcase of some great work that they've done in the heavy metal team. Almost like an albino-esque Nightbringer there. Some Necrons rising up from a swamp down there, which is very cool. Very nice indeed. Really kind of going with the horror aesthetics, really the space undead. Some more stories here, transcripts. Beautiful bit of artwork there with the Monolith. Like the artwork in these codexes, especially the 3rd edition and 2nd edition, is just breathtaking. Story here with Templars. Templars being shown who's in charge. And a little bit of information on the next couple of pages here with the weaponry and the fleet. Essentially, the Imperium trying to work out how this works because it shouldn't work the way it does, as in it can take out heavy armor very quickly and not really be that huge, and being able to transport by troops. And a lot of the weaponry and of course the Necrons phasing out before being able to be captured. So a lot of kind of shields going up trying to protect it and make sure the Imperium can take it. Similar story about the Necron fleet. Obviously this was kind of like the time Battlefleet Gothic was coming out as well, and Necrons did have a range there as well. Necron fleet, once again, doing very similar to Necrons on the ground, taking out the Necrons, not using the warp, being very fast and disappearing before anyone was able to do anything or really assess their opponent. And yeah, I mean, if you ever get able to pick this codex up, it's absolutely beautiful. There's so much in here to read, and I really recommend it for anyone that's getting into Necrons now, just to go back and look where they came from. Although, like I said, the narrative has changed slightly, a lot of the themes are still very, very true to where they are now. We're back here, we have got a campaign play, so you could probably translate this over to Crusade in some ways that you are used to in 9th edition now. Bit about terrain. And then we go on to a mission there. So turning on to the last page here, we get a little map, some more little snippets here to the Imperium, really trying to suss out who these new robots are that are appearing from deserty planets. And on the map here, we've got a little planet that's commonly known by the AdMech as home. It is Mars. There you go. So a lot of stuff here kind of hinting towards the future. And yeah, absolutely a must-have for any Necron player. If you can get yourself a copy of this codex, I really recommend it. You can normally find them on eBay now. Maybe even as like a second-hand bookshop. Who knows? I mean, look at that. Beautiful. Just lined up in units the way Necrons should be. Yep, please pick it up if you get a chance. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it, taking me down memory lane. And hopefully see you next time for another Retro Codex review. This is Dom from Black Toe Studios. Take care.